everybody. Okay, good. We just had a very interesting conversation. We're continuing with the Heart of the Lotus Sutra on page 333. That's a mystic number, isn't it? And what a great subtitle. The assembly on Eagle Peak has not yet disbanded. What does that really mean? Also, notice here, I checked out the little gray 3 books I talked about last week, saying that this is actually, they're all published date 1996. So the source material for this is 1996. I know from looking at the gray books, this is a retranslation. In fact, I know from talking to the people in Santa Monica that this is a retranslation. I was waiting for this. Didn't realize this was actually what it was. Okay, because I'd heard that they were going to redo. He was going to come out with a redoing of the 3 little gray books. I didn't realize that that's actually what this was. Okay, so the assembly on Eagle Peak has not yet disbanded. This year, 1996. So what does that make this? What I'm reading right now.
20.
Almost 20 years old. Okay? Marks the 50th year since President Toda began lecturing on the Lotus Sutra after the war. President Toda's lectures have always remained in my heart, obviously. I have composed each installment out of the desire to pass on to future generations my mentor's lectures, which were profound and lucid and resounded with his love of humanity. Okay, so what's President Ikeda conveying in that first paragraph?
Mentor and disciple.
Exactly. Everything that I'm telling you has its source, not in my life, but in the life that was passed on to me by my mentor. Okay? So this isn't some revelation that's occurred in my life. This is actually a profoundly updated, contemporary understanding of the same truth that was conveyed to me back in the 50s. All right? After the war. He says, through this lecture series, people the world over have had a new opportunity to deeply study his guidance, which brims with wisdom and conviction. Inspiration and determination are spreading. I feel as though I can see him smiling broadly on Eagle Peak. Because again, what preceded this is an explanation of the expedient means and lifespan chapters. Lectures on the Sutra by Josei Toda. Okay? So you've already read that. Now we're reading this. Does this remotely sound like what we read when we read Lectures on the Sutras by Josei Toda? Yes and no. Yes and no. President Toda spoke in a different manner as it was translated anyhow than President Ikeda has. First of all, compare the size of the text. All right? Okay, so speaking of Eagle Peak, the passage we're studying reads in part, when living beings have become truly faithful, honest and upright, gentle in intent, single-mindedly desiring to see the Buddha, not hesitating even if it costs them their lives, then I and the assembly of monks appear together on Holy Eagle Peak. This passage reveals the key to attaining Buddhahood for people in the latter day of the law. Okay? So that's a significant sentence. He's saying, pay attention here. This is the key for attaining enlightenment in your present form. President Toda's enlightenment in prison, which became the origin of the Soka Gakkai's development in the post-war period, means he read this passage with his whole life. What is he qualifying there? The development of the Soka Gakkai occurred because of Josei Toda's enlightenment in prison, not because of the teachings and the guidance of Nichiren Shoshu's priesthood.
Yeah.
That is a fact. That's why it didn't happen until the Soka Gakkai. Okay? Because Nichiren Shoshu's priesthood was always there. I'm not disparaging the priesthood. What I'm saying is that the proof of actual fact of Kosen Rufu occurred here with these guys. Not in anything that occurred prior to that. Do you understand? And of course, we respect the people that maintained that life, that lifeblood that could be passed forward, so that President Makaguchi could inherit it, and President Toda could inherit it, and President Ikeda could inherit it. We don't disparage them for no reason. We don't suddenly hate priests. Okay? But the Kosen Rufu that was attacked by Nikan when he excommunicated everybody because we wouldn't turn and run on President Ikeda was predicated on this unity. This is the unity of faith that this section of the Lotus Sutra actually correlates to. All right? There had been no real circumstance that single-mindedly desiring to see the Buddha, not hesitating even at the cost of their lives, that I and the assembly of monks appear together on Holy Eagle Peak. That's the beginning of Kosen Rufu, right? That's all the bodhisattvas of the earth emerging. Do you understand? Yeah. Mm-hmm. So, he says, from the standpoint of Nichiren Buddhism, we will discuss the meaning of these lines on a still deeper level. Mm-hmm. Nichiren Buddhism, the Buddhism of the sowing. As I have already mentioned, the verse section of the lifespan chapter is a song calling out to the people in the world after Shakyamuni's passing, especially to those of the latter day. And within the verse section, the above passage in particular reveals the key for people of the latter day to attain Buddhahood. Now, I already mentioned this. Why is this the key for the people of the latter day to attain Buddhahood? Because the way we attain Buddhahood is through the Buddhism of the sowing. Yes. Okay? And who is the original mentor of the Buddhism of the sowing? Nichiren. And what is the passage from the Lotus Sutra that Nichiren says allowed him to perceive the three bodies within his own life? Single-mindedly desiring to see the Buddha, not hesitating even if it costs them their lives. Okay? The vow. Yeah. The vow that takes you there. The depth of faith that is required to get there. Mm-hmm. Revealed and taught by Nichiren specifically. And carried on by the first three presidents, frankly speaking. Okay? They didn't capitulate to the government when they said, put Shinto talismans in your butsununs. That's why they went to prison. Because they stood up and said, this is bullshit. We're not supposed to do that. We can't do that. Well, you're a troublemaker then. Yeah. Go to prison. Do you think they're the only two that went to prison? You guys know this, right? No. There's a bunch of people that went to prison. The whole leadership of the Soka Gikuyu, whatever Kai, whatever it was called before it was reformed as by President Ikeda or President Toda after the war as the Soka Gakkai. You know, a lot of people got rounded up. They're the only two that refused to bow to the authority of the emperor. Okay, as Nichiren had instructed everybody, as the guys at the top at the Atsuhara persecution. What inspired the Daigo Honzon? People willing to give their lives, not begrudging their lives, even if it cost them their lives. That's why we got the Daigo Honzon. Okay, do you understand the significance of this? That's the lesson in faith that we're supposed to pass down from one mentor to the disciple who becomes a mentor to the disciple who becomes a mentor. Do you all understand? Mm-hmm. All right, so that's why he's saying with such specificity. Why is it the key for us to attain Buddhahood in our present form? Because this is the key to Nichiren attaining Buddhahood in his present form. We're not different than him. It's the same process. We have to grasp the same truth on the same level to do that. Luckily, we have the blueprint of his life and the three mentors of the three presidents to follow as it relates to examples in faith. Do you understand? And you know, my history is not to be a rah-rah soka gakkai guy, right? I mean, really it isn't. These are truths that objectively I see, it's undeniable. It wouldn't matter what my opinion of anybody is. These are the facts, folks. Okay? So whether you like it or not, this is the truth. What he's saying is absolutely the truth. The key is contained in the phrase single-mindedly. Nichiren Buddhism elucidates and makes available the secret of single-mindedly to all people of the latter day in the form of Nam-myoho Renge Kyo. Okay? Pure cause. Pure cause. The effect being what you need it to be. Thus, in the letter to Gijobo, Nichiren writes, the verse section of the chapter states single-mindedly desiring to see the Buddha, not hesitating even if it cost them their lives. As a result of this passage, I have revealed the Buddhahood in my own life. The reason is that it is this sutra passage that has enabled me to embody the three great secret laws, or the reality of 3,000 realms in a single moment of life that is found in the Lifespan chapter. Now, again, I haven't read this for a while. I didn't know this was coming, but that's what I was just talking about. You know, Nichiren qualifies that this is the basis of how he was able to attain Buddhahood in its present form. He then clarifies the implicit meaning of single-mindedly, saying, single-mindedly desiring to see the Buddha may be read as follows. I've said this to you guys on many occasions. Single-mindedly observing the Buddha, concentrating one's mind on seeing the Buddha, and then when looking at one's own mind, perceiving that it is the Buddha. Do you understand the depth of that truth? What's it qualify? You are the Buddha. That there's no separation. You are the Buddha. Single-mindedly desiring to see the Buddha may be read as follows. Single-mindedly observing the Buddha, the Gohonzon. Concentrating one's mind on seeing the Buddha, desiring to fulfill your mission for Kosen Rufu as the disciple of the original teacher. Okay? To fulfill your true identity as a bodhisattva of the earth. And then when looking at one's own mind, perceiving the Buddha nature that is inherent in all things, perceiving the truth and the reality that you are the Buddha, exactly as you are. Nichiren interprets single-mindedly desiring to see the Buddha as meaning to see one's own mind is to see the Buddha, because there is no separation between the two. There is no difference between the two. He thus indicates that the mind of an ordinary person who seeks the Buddha, this is the key, who seeks the Buddha, not just any old gray matter, delusional, BS. This is someone in faith that is desiring to attain Buddhahood in their present form for the sake of the law. What's the true purpose of seeking Buddhahood? To get benefits?
No.
To be the smartest guy in the room? To make everybody equal to yourself. Okay? He thus indicates that the mind of an ordinary person who seeks the Buddha becomes and manifests the mind of the Buddha. He thus indicates that the mind of an ordinary person who seeks the Buddha becomes and manifests the mind of the Buddha. The oneness. Do you understand? Nichiren says that to perceive Buddhahood within one's own mind is to attain the effect of the Buddha eternally endowed with the three body. What does that mean? To attain the effect. It means to reveal the inherent three bodies that already exist in your existence, in your temporary gathering of the five components as one of the 10 worlds. Do you understand? Everybody's with me?
Yes.
All right. Herein lies life's most profound secret. In this mind of faith, because we talked about what is the mind of faith he's referring to, doubt-free faith, mugi washin. In this mind of faith, because it takes that kind of faith to be able to perceive that Buddha. All right? It's because it's not theoretical, it's actual. The ordinary person is a Buddha embodying the mystic principles of the mutual possession of the 10 worlds and the reality of 3,000 realms in a single moment of life. What's that mean? Embodying the mystic principles of the mutual possession of the 10 worlds. The fact that the 10th world exists in all the other 9. Always, perpetually, at each moment, without ever there being a moment that it doesn't exist. Right? Do you understand? And he says, and the reality of 3,000 realms in a single moment of life, which is the essence of Ichinen Sanzen. And that's, again, to perceive your life, the truth of the middle way. That's to perceive your life as Buddha. For all of us in the latter day of the law, so he makes no distinction, for all of us, including him, the Daishonin manifested the mind of the Buddha and the effect of the Buddha eternally endowed with the three bodies, which are inherent in his life as the Gohonzon. Everybody understands that, right? That's why we can access it so easily in a single lifetime. In the latter day, the Buddha whom we should seek single-mindedly is none other than the Gohonzon, the original teacher. Okay? The true identity of Nichiren. Accordingly, the lines that follow, then I'm sorry, I think I spit on my paper. Accordingly, the lines that follow, then I and the assembly of monks appear together on Holy Eagle Peak, allude to the Gohonzon. This is clarified in Nichiren's words. The Gohonzon is the realization and manifestation of this passage. You with me? All right. The ceremony at Eagle Peak in the Lotus Sutra is a ceremony of life that reveals the world of Buddhahood existing in Shakyamuni's own heart. It reveals the Buddha's life, which is as vast as the universe. In this passage, I indicates Shakyamuni, or the world of Buddhahood. The assembly of monks refers to the bodhisattvas and people of the two vehicles, and together means all beings of the 10 worlds. In short, the ceremony at Eagle Peak reveals the Buddha's life, embodying the mutual possession of the 10 worlds and 3,000 realms in a single moment of life. So what's he talking about there? In short, the ceremony at Eagle Peak, which is what? The ceremony in the air, okay, reveals the Buddha's life, the Buddha's life embodying the mutual possession of the 10 worlds and the 3,000 realms in a single moment of life. Embodying the Buddha's life. What Buddha? The original, the Nam-myoho Renge-kyo, thus come one. Okay, the original teacher. The Buddha that didn't get taught by another Buddha. The Buddha whose mentor was the law itself. The Buddha who fused with the law to allow everybody and everything to have access to that truth. Okay? Making use of the imagery of the ceremony at Eagle Peak, i.e. the ceremony in the air, I didn't know he was going to say that either, Nichiren manifested the world of Buddhahood existing in his life as the Gohonzon. So was it to be weird or supernatural or above all of us? No. It was to let us in on the truth so that we could share in it with him. What is the purpose of the advent of every Buddha? I just said it a moment ago. To make people equal to themselves. That's what the Daishonen's whole gig was. To make and allow us to be equal to him. Not subservient, not below him. You okay? Okay. You can say you're okay, and that's really not okay. Are you okay? You want some water or anything on?
I will be okay soon.
All right. Those evil fruits.
Too sweet.
Okay, therefore, he says, this passage refers to the assembly on Holy Eagle Peak, which, again, and who's he saying? When he's therefore he says, who's he referring to? Who says? Nichiren says. Yeah. Therefore, Nichiren says, this passage refers to the assembly on Holy Eagle Peak, which continues in solemn state and is not yet disbanded from the OTT, right? Right. Okay, so what did he just say President Toda's whole thing was to constantly talk about this assembly that has not yet disbanded. So what does that tell you about President Toda's life? Absolutely at one with the life of the original mentor. Yes. That's what qualifies him to be the mentor. Do you understand? Oh, I'll start crying. In other words, the ceremony at Eagle Peak is still being solemnly conducted and has not ended. It's not a historical event or a mystical, magical event or even something that was not real. It's real in the circumstance of the lives and everything that has extended from it and has not ceased to extend from it since it occurred. Do you understand? Because it's on that basis that the Buddhism of the sowing could be revealed. Without the lifespan chapter, there can be no revelation of the Buddhism of the sowing. Do you understand? Without the ceremony in there can be no extension of the opportunity to attain Buddhahood in your present form on the basis of the Buddhism of the sowing. Do you understand? Okay, that's why it's so important to us. Nichiren also says, wherever we dwell and practice the single vehicle, what's that mean? Nam-myoho Renge-kyo to the Gohonzon. That place will be the capital of eternally tranquil light. And without having to take a step, those who are our disciples and lay supporters can view Eagle Peak in India and day and night will go to and from the land of eternally tranquil light that has existed for all time. The original state, revealed by the original teacher. Okay, do you understand? All right. So, when we chant Nam-myoho Renge-kyo to the Gohonzon, we are taking our places at the solemn ceremony of the assembly at Eagle Peak. When we earnestly chant Nam-myoho Renge-kyo, the Eagle Peak in our hearts, our Buddha nature, comes to brilliantly illuminate our lives. We transition from the nine worlds into the 10th. Our very existence becomes the ceremony in the air. Okay? So that thing that could be perceived as metaphor from the 16th chapter of the Lotus Sutra is not metaphor. It's actualized in the existence of us as a temporary gathering of the 5 components. Do you understand? It's not a metaphor. It's the reality of your existence. It is a manner of conveyance of that original state. Okay? As it, to the degree that it could be explained or extrapolated in the Buddhism of the harvest. Because don't forget, even though it's in the Lotus Sutra, it's still Buddhism of the harvest because it's it's not even the former day. It's prior to the former day of the law. When did the former day of the law begin? Shakyamuni's death. Okay? So, when we chant Nam-myoho Renge-kyo to the Gohonzon, we are taking our places at the solemn ceremony of the assembly at Eagle Peak. When we earnestly chant Nam-myoho Renge-kyo, the Eagle Peak in our hearts comes to brilliantly illuminate our lives. Our very existence becomes the ceremony in the air. Our daily activities become, in every respect, the conduct of persons gathered at Eagle Peak. How wondrous. Also, and that occurs without us even perceiving it. Also, broadly speaking, it could be said that the SGI itself represents the assembly on Holy Eagle Peak, which continues in solemn state and is not yet disbanded, because its members, as Nichiren's followers, are advancing Kosen Rufu in the unity of many in body, one in mind. Do you all understand? Yes. Okay. While incarcerated during the war, President Toda had an experience in which he perceived himself at the Lotus Sutra ceremony in the air as a bodhisattva of the earth. Everybody's aware of that, right?
Yes.
He experienced with his own life the assembly on Holy Eagle Peak, which continues in solemn state and is not yet disbanded. At that time, President Toda realized his mission as a bodhisattva of the earth, a realization that became the origin of the Soka Gakkai's post-war development. Everybody understands, right? Yeah. All right. After President Toda's death, Nichiren, hearing us vow to advance one in mind toward Kosen Rufu, said, "It seems to me that this body, the Soka Gakkai, truly represents the assembly on Holy Eagle Peak, which continues in solemn state and has not yet disbanded. To put it another way, this body is the true Pure Land of Eagle Peak. It is the Buddha's great gathering, and as such commands my deepest respect." Does everybody understand what he's saying there? Why he said that? It was very clear to Nichiren, okay, what the movement behind the Soka presidents was all about. Okay? What broke the unity is a different perspective than that. Okay? So it's not like we've always been supported by high priests up until Nikken. Fact, almost as a parent and a child. But the child grew up. That's really what occurred. The SGI is truly a sublime gathering of the Buddha's children. It is the assembly on Holy Eagle Peak that continues in solemn state and has not yet disbanded. The SGI is a gathering of bodhisattvas of the earth who, just as in the ceremony on Eagle Peak, have appeared to lead all people of the latter day to enlightenment and so fulfill their eternal vow. What is their motivation and why do they do that? Because they made an eternal vow. They are the original disciples of the Buddha in his true identity. Okay? They're original disciples. They have the original truth. They're the practitioners that come forth in the Buddhism of the sowing and actually plant the seed of wisdom to perceive the original state in the lives of those that cannot. We are eternal comrades, advancing together over the three existences toward Kosen Rufu. So what did he just say is the last line of that chapter 31? We are eternal comrades. That means my dependent origination includes you guys. Okay? Doesn't include some pretty weird people too. But the point is that there is a reason why we're together now. There is a reason why we will be together again in the future. You never have to question that. That's the reason why we're together now. It's a continuum. It never stops. It's what he just said. Over the three existences, past, present, and future. Chapter 32, page 339.
10 minutes more.
Oh, good. I won't outread where I've read. Okay, good. Gaji go shujo jozai shifu metsu iho bin riko genu metsufu metsu yoko ushujo kugyo shingyo shagabuo hichu isetsumu ho nyoto funo monshi tani ga metsudo gakin sho shujo mosazai oku kai kofu igen shinrogo sho katsugo ingo shinrinbo nai shitsui seppo. At that time, the Romaji translates, at that time, I tell the living beings that I am always here, never entering extinction, but that because of the power of expedient means, at times I appear to be extinct, at other times not, and that if there are living beings in other lands who are relevant and sincere in their wish to believe, then among them too I will preach the unsurpassed law. But you have not heard of this, so you suppose that I enter extinction. When I look at living beings, I see them drowned in a sea of suffering. Therefore, I do not show myself, causing them to thirst for me. Then, when their minds are filled with yearning, at last I appear and preach the law for them. Okay, you ready? The Buddha, did anybody glean anything from that? I'll just let President Ikeda explain it. The Buddha appears wherever people with seeking minds may be, and illuminates their lives with sun-like brilliance. One of Shakyamuni's disciples composed a poem praising the greatness of his mentor. Behold the brilliance of the Great One. Does he not shine like the sun in the sky? The sun is always solemnly shining, even though at times obscured by clouds and not visible from earth, like when we're depressed, or like when some tragic event has occurred that's with a selfless murder of a child. All right? That's when those are things that obscure the truth. All right? The Buddha likewise is always present in the world. I am always here, never entering extinction. This describes the true aspect of the Buddha's life. But if the Buddha were to remain constantly at people's sides, they would become utterly dependent on him. And so he would become an ATM. And so, to cause his disciples to become self-reliant, to become Buddhas themselves, Shakyamuni, employing the power of expedient means, at times appears to be extinct, at other times not. That is, he gives the appearance of sometimes dying, sometimes living. Just because the sun is obscured by dark clouds in one place does not mean it is hidden from sight in another. Other lands in this passage indicates that the sunlight of the Buddha's compassion shines also on other worlds. If there are living beings in other lands who are reverent and sincere in their wish to believe, then among them too I will preach the unsurpassed law. This indicates that the Buddha appears and expounds the unsurpassed law where there are people who sincerely believe in him wherever they may be. In terms of Nichiren Buddhism, or the Buddhism of the sowing, the implicit meaning of what we just read, the Buddha who is always here in the world and never enters extinction is the Gohonzon, or the Nam-myoho Renge-kyo, thus come one. Everybody's with me on that one, right? We've already qualified that. It's not Shakyamuni of India. The unsurpassed law that this eternal Buddha expounds is none other than Nam-myoho Renge-kyo. Who expounded that law? Nichiren. What's the true identity of the Buddha that expounds that law? The original teacher. They're the same thing. When we chant with unhesitant faith, what's unhesitant faith?
Doubt-free.
Doubt-free faith. Our voices, just as they are, become the voice of the Buddha, who is always here expounding the unsurpassed law. We become an extension of that great life. Through relating actual proof of benefit, for example, this voice of the Buddha teaches us the unsurpassed power of the mystic law. Right?
Right.
Isn't that what occurs during the course of our practice? Yeah. I see them drowned in a sea of suffering means that the great light of the Buddha's compassion shines upon all those whose lives are submerged in suffering. The Buddhist law illuminates society, which is a sea of suffering, with the light of the sun of eternal joy. Let me read that a little more clearly. I see them drowned in a sea of suffering means that the great light of the Buddha's compassion shines upon all those whose lives are submerged in suffering, not just those of us that are Buddhists.
Right.
The Buddhist law illuminates society. Now, what's that mean? It illuminates society, which is a sea of suffering because of all the delusion and all the incorrect thinking. It illuminates it with the light of the sun of eternal joy, with the light of the sun of Buddhahood, of original Buddhahood. All right? Lecturing on lifespan, President Toda said, at least among those active as adult members of society, there is probably, we could all use a nap, huh? I think. At least among those active as adult members of society, there is probably no one who today could unequivocally and sincerely say that life in the real world is joyful. All right? So he's acknowledging the truth of what you've already observed earlier from our conversation before we started the recording. Okay? He's acknowledging that that's a truth, that that's real. That's real. But it's not the reality that a Buddha sees. It's the reality that a common mortal sees. Okay? But it's the same reality.
Yeah.
It's not a different reality. At least among those active as adult members of society, there is probably no one who today could unequivocally and sincerely say that life in the real world is joyful. So what he's also saying there, even I don't look at it that way. You think nothing ruffles my feather and I just run around unperturbed, gentle in intent? No. President Ikeda has to deal with a lot of bullshit.
Yeah.
That's absolute total bullshit. All right? That's not going to make you... you're going to have to say, those are not joyful moments. All right? Yeah. True joy in life is not merely a matter of having money or good health. It is a state where joy wells forth from the very depths of one's being. The truth, okay, that pervades one even though you might be in one of the other 9 worlds. It's not predicated on you being in 6 through 9 as a part of the 9 worlds. You can feel that joy being in a state of hell. Right? Do you understand?
Yes.
President Toda's prayer was for all members to attain the state of absolute happiness in which living is itself a great joy. The state of life he had attained himself. The Buddha's prayer is for all people to develop the same state of life he possesses. What's that mean? It means making everyone equal to himself. Okay. All right? The Lotus Sutra is the scripture in which he reveals the path to this end. I want each of you to become sun-like existences. I want each of you to become a sunlight existence just like me. This is Shakyamuni's spirit expressed in the lifespan chapter. And if you'll remember what we've been reading throughout this whole book, that's what Daisaku Ikeda has said maybe 50 times so far. All right? He's not said I'm the mentor because I'm a badass and you should all kneel down to me. He's saying, I'm the mentor because I want to teach you the life state that I learned from President Toda, my mentor. And I want to pass it on to you, independent of anybody else's interpretation. Okay? I want to give you the direct feed.
Yeah.
President Toda, where am I?
Next page.
The next page. Okay, pardon me. Nichiren Buddhism is the teaching that enables each person to become a sun. to attain Buddhahood.
Right.
It reveals the great path to true self-reliance, Buddhahood. The Russian poet Alexander Pushkin sings, "Before the bright dawn, even so, shall flicker and die every sophistry jaded. At reason's unperishing spark, salute to the sunrise and vanish the dark." Life is not all sunshine, which is what we started talking about. All right? So if we're looking for it to be, that's delusional. That's an unrealistic expectation. All right? There are cloudy days. He says there might be. He says there are cloudy days and days that are cold and wet. The days, your father had that accident. I mean, out of everybody we're talking about here, your strength blew me away. All right? I'm sure there must have been moments when you weren't as strong as you appeared otherwise, but you never, ever, ever made it seem to be a reflection on your faith or on the Gohonzon. You have my deepest respect for that. You will always have my deepest respect for that. And believe me, your father's like tears of joy over that reality. He's still there with you. Life is not all sunshine. There are cloudy days and days that are cold and wet. Shit happens. There are times when we are chilled to the bone by blowing snow. Okay? But at all times, and no matter what happens, let us dauntlessly advance with the sun in our hearts blazing ever brilliantly. That's faith. That's what turns that cloudy day into a sunny day. Right? Continuing, never giving up. Even in the coldest months of winter, the sunlight of spring is definitely drawing near. And with the arrival of spring, even the thickest walls of ice melt away, turning into water that moistens the earth, producing the floral pageantry of spring. And we'll stop there on page 342 and start again on chapter 33 on 343 next week. Thank you.